Jonah, Jonah. Great. That must be God calling me again. I doubt I could hear anyone else calling me from inside this ginormous fish. Besides, it's all God's fault that I'm in here anyway. Actually, the only one I think might be as thick-headed or stubborn or obstinate as me is God. I thought I made it very clear to God that I have no interest in heading to Nineveh at all. Clearly, this is before the passage we heard this morning. That's why I took off for Tarshish. In case you don't know, Tarshish is exactly the opposite direction of Nineveh. Read my footsteps. No, thank you. For someone else to go to prophesy to those people of Nineveh, just find somebody else. Nineveh. You know Nineveh? Sin City. A classic archetypal wicked city for generations. A plunderer of nations. The book that carries my name, the book Jonah that you know, calls it a great city. And it was, in many ways. This one-time capital of Assyria had, in its heyday, a king's palace without rival, a colossal city wall, an elaborate water system. Don't forget, this is about 690 to 612 BCE. An elaborate water system of canals, levees, and dams, and beautiful parks throughout. So God gets this idea that I need to go to Nineveh to tell the people to get their act together, straighten up, and fly right. Like I said, not for me. Get somebody else for that assignment. It's not my idea of a great commission. So I got on a ship, headed in the exact opposite direction instead. And then, well, you know the story. Hurricane Yahweh hits. Wind and waves like you've never seen before. Every mariner on board was crying out to their God, hoping one of them would quell the storm. All the cargo got thrown overboard too, just to lighten the load. I was fast asleep in the belly of the boat when the captain came to fetch me. I'd made the mistake of telling the crew that I wanted to go to Tarshish to get away from my God. In a blur of allegations, pure terror, and total mayhem, they tossed me overboard too. Next thing I know, this ginormous fish was sent by God to swallow me up. So that's where I am, hanging out inside this fish. Fish food. That's me. Well, turns out the belly of a big fish is a pretty good place to pray. It took me more than 2 days to figure that out. Remember, thick-headed, stubborn, obstinate. But I finally did turn my heart around, and I prayed to God. On some level, I know and trust that God is with me in everything. Good, bad, neutral. But sometimes I need a major wake-up call or a really good fish tale like this one to get my attention. So as I prayed, I gave thanks to God, asked for another chance to walk rather than swim in God's ways, and let God know that I believe deliverance belongs to the Lord. Shortly thereafter, God gave the fish the okay to spit me out onto dry land. And no sooner had I hit the ground when God said, "Get up and get moving. I need you to go to Nineveh right now and give them my message." And this time, I headed straight for Nineveh. Now, I think I may have forgotten to mention that Nineveh is full of Gentiles, and I'm basically a xenophobic Jew who believes the Lord is a supreme national God who stands with me and my people against my enemies and my nation's enemies. Truth be told, I guess I'd make a pretty good ally for those hard-right Christian nationalists in the good old US of A. Okay, but I'm leaping ahead a few millennia. Honestly, I hope God goes ahead and annihilates Nineveh and everyone who lives there. Well, I'm finally there now. And all I have to say is, 40 days more and Nineveh shall be overthrown. That's what God sent me to say. And in case you're wondering, by overthrown, I mean just like Sodom and Gomorrah and all those inhospitable ingrates. I know the Hebrew word that translates overthrown can, in the passive reflexive voice, mean turned around or transformed, but surely God means overthrown here. 40 days more, and Nineveh shall be overthrown. Yes! But then, are you ready for this? It turns out that God not only gives thick-headed, stubborn, obstinate individuals like me second chances, because God did, right? God also gives entire cities and congregations and nations second chances too. When those Ninevites heard my prophecy, my message from God, everyone and everything, all the people, from peasants to royalty, and even by the king's decree, all the animals fasted and were covered with sackcloth and cried out to God, hoping that God might have a change of mind and give them a second chance. And guess what? God did change God's mind and did not overthrow Nineveh. But how can this be? Is this not exactly why I headed in the opposite direction the first time? Come on, God. You told me to go tell them they were going to be overthrown. Can't you do it, please? I knew you'd change your mind. You're such a gracious God and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, and ready to forgive and forgive and forgive. It never stops, does it? You even forgive those who have not earned it in any way. You even forgive those I don't think deserve it. You even forgive those whom I cannot stand, those who are my arch enemies, those for the life of me who I do not understand. What kind of justice is this? If I cannot win at another's expense, God, just kill me now. Why on earth are you so angry, Jonah? Asked my God. Forget it. I'm just going to take all my toys now, head to the edge of the city, build myself a little hut, and wait and see how long it takes Nineveh to go back to its wicked ways. Because you watch, they will. And God continued to watch over Jonah, even as God continued to watch over all the inhabitants of Nineveh. And Jonah continued to be displeased with God, refusing to take Jonah's side and Jonah's side alone. What kind of justice is this? God continued to try to help Jonah understand that God's mercy, God's grace, is not limited or partial or controlled or constrained by any one individual or faith or nation. God forgives as God forgives. Yes, God forgives as God forgives. Thanks be to God. Amen.